Students, today we will discuss about the productivity. I will tell you that how we can define the productivity. Then we will discuss about the different factors, that what are the different factors which can affect the productivity, and if we want to enhance the productivity in our organizational setting, how we can do that. Then there are two different models which have been used for calculating the productivity. These are the single factor productivity model and the multi-factor productivity model. We will discuss these models as well. Then we will discuss that how we can measure the productivity, and we will discuss the different problems, different practical examples. So this is the outline for our today's lecture. So let's start with the definition of productivity. Productivity is the ratio of output to the input. Now this is a very simple definition of productivity, that it is always defined as the ratio of output over input. Students, there is another way we can define the productivity. We sometimes say that productivity is the combination of efficiency and effectiveness, and let me differentiate between efficiency and effectiveness. When we talk about efficiency, it means we are talking about the different resources which are being used in order to achieve the particular organizational objectives. And when we talk about the effectiveness, it means we are talking about the quality of output. So efficiency plus effectiveness will make the productivity, and let's discuss an example of efficiency and effectiveness. सपोज स्टूडेंट्स, मैं किसी कारपेंटर को कहता हूँ कि आपने 5 टेबल्स मुझे बनाकर देनी है और 1 वीक में बना के देनी है, लेकिन अगर वो ये 5 टेबल्स मुझे बना के देता है और 5 दिन में बना के दे देता है, इट मीन्स ही इज़ एफिशिएंट. Why? Because he is making those tables in lesser time. Time is also a very important input or a resource, I would say. So he is efficient. लेकिन उसने 5 दिन में तो बनाकर दे दी आपको टेबल, लेकिन 1 दिन के बाद आपको पता चला किसी की कील निकली हुई है, किसी में और डिफेक्ट है. इट मीन्स ही वाज नॉट इफेक्टिव. सो इफेक्टिवनेस इज एक्चुअली रिलेटेड टू द क्वालिटी ऑफ आउटपुट, and efficiency is related to the resources which are being used for the production of that output. So is the relation between the productivity, that if someone is efficient, not effective, he will not be productive. If someone is effective, not efficient, he will not be productive. He will be productive if and only if he is efficient as well as effective. Now if we compare this definition of productivity with respect to that efficiency and effectiveness with this one, that is the ratio of output to input, the efficiency actually relates to the input and effectiveness actually relates to the output. So this is the way we can relate the combination of efficiency and effectiveness with this ratio of output to the input. And ultimately the objective in any organization is to improve the productivity. And let me discuss here about the difference between production and productivity as well. Production, students, is only the function of output, but productivity is the function of both output as well as input. So this is the relation between production and productivity. Students, there are some important factors which are important with respect to that productivity, and if we give due consideration to these factors, we can enhance the productivity in our organizational settings. These factors are capital, like machinery, then quality, that is the quality of the goods and services, then technology, the technology which may be used in that transformation process to produce the final goods and services, then the management style and the management activities, the way the manager is performing the different activities, that is also very important. So if we consider all of these 4 factors, we can say that capital, technology and management is related to the input part of the productivity, and quality, that is the quality of the output, is related to the output part of the productivity. So whenever an organization is interested to increase the productivity in the organizational setting, he or she should give the due importance to all of these factors. Students, as we discussed that the productivity is actually the ratio between outputs to the inputs. So by using this formula, we can easily measure the process performance or the process improvement, and again the productivity represents output related to the particular input. Only through the productivity we can increase our standard of living. Now students, this is a big challenge for our today's organizations when there is a lot of competition among the different organizations, and when we talk about the globalization as well, when there are different foreign competitors, your local competitors are there. So the only way we can improve the competitiveness for our organization is to increase the productivity, and in the only way we can also increase our standards of living. So it is very important about the organization to give the due concentration to the productivity improvement. Now we will discuss that how we can do it and how we can improve the productivity. Now students, let's suppose there are 1000 units being produced in some organization, and these units are being produced by consuming 250 labor hours. So if we put these two values in the formula, that is the output over input, in this particular case 1000 is our output and 250 hours, that is the labor hours, is our input. So our productivity will be equal to 1000 over 250, that will be 4 units per labor hour. So this is our productivity, and this is the way we can measure the productivity. Now students, let's discuss this formula, that we have used only one factor as input, that is the labor hours. So if we use only a single factor as input for the calculation of productivity, this model is called as the single factor productivity model. But if we use the multiple factors for the productivity calculation as input, then that will be termed as multi-factor productivity model. So in this particular example, we have used only a single factor, that is the labor hours, as input. So this formula is termed as a single factor productivity model. So as you can see, students, there can be the different sort of inputs like labor, material, energy, capital, miscellaneous, time. So all these are the different inputs. If we use more than one factors as input, and sometimes all the factors available as input in order to calculate the productivity, then that will be termed as multi-factor productivity model. And if we use all the factors available as input for the calculation of productivity, then that may be termed as total factor productivity model. So this is the difference between single factor productivity model and multi-factor productivity model. Again, if we use a single factor as input for the calculation of productivity, that will be the single factor productivity model. And if we use multiple factors for the calculation of productivity as input, then that will be termed as multi-factor productivity model. Now students, we are just talking about the productivity at the organizational level, but it is also possible that we can calculate the productivity at the national level. And if we are able to find out the total value of the goods and services produced in our country, and we divide that sum with the total population, we will get the national productivity. And as I told you that it is very much important for our nation as well as for our all the organizations to increase the productivity, because that is the only way we can increase our standards of living. So we can calculate the productivity at the organizational level as well as we can calculate the productivity at some national level. So students, what is the importance of productivity measurement? We talked about single factor productivity model and multi-factor productivity model. Unless we are able to measure the productivity, how we can improve the productivity? So it is very important for improvement that we should be able to find out and calculate the productivity level. It is a very effective tool for decision making at all the economic levels. If you are able to find out the productivity level for our different operations or for our different organizational settings, then it can be very helpful for the decision making in the perspective of that improvement. Success of productivity measurement and analysis depends largely upon the clear understanding by all the parties concerned, that is enterprise managers, workers, employers, trade unions, government institutions, of why the productivity measurement is important for effectiveness of organization. So all the stakeholders, and especially the internal stakeholders, that is the employees of the organization, should know that what is the importance of productivity measurement and what is the importance of productivity improvement. So students, the simple and practical approaches to productivity analysis are measurement of workers' productivity, that is the labor productivity, that we can calculate the productivity of our workers, so that you can compare the performance of the different workers, and accordingly you can always make some important decisions, like you can define the certain incentive level on the basis of the productivity level of the different workers. So in this way you can take some important decisions. Then measurement systems for planning and analyzing unit labor requirements. Accordingly you can plan and you can analyze the different things and measurement systems, especially in order to have a sort of competition among the laborers. And again, if you are able to measure the labor productivity, that itself will be a sort of motivation for the different laborers, because in future they will try to work more in order to increase their productivity. The measurement systems of labor productivity aimed at structure of the labor resource use, so we can always ensure the different and efficient utilization of the different resources within the organization. So we are always interested as the entrepreneurs in the value added productivity at our organizational levels. Three most common purposes of productivity analysis are comparing the enterprises with its competitors. So students, this is very important point, that is we can always compare our own productivity with our competitors, and we can always define a sort of benchmark, so that we can improve the productivity in future in order to meet that benchmarked value. Then it determines the relative performance of the departments and the workers. Similarly, if we are able to measure the productivity for our different departments, we can always have a sort of competition among the different departments, so that their performance may be improved in future. Then we can compare the relative benefits of various types of inputs for collective bargaining and gain sharing. Again, that is related to the efficient utilization of resources, that if we are able to compare the relative benefits of various types of input, we can always negotiate with our laborers, as well as we can negotiate for the different compensation levels for our workers. Students, let's discuss a very important example. This will guide us that how we can calculate the productivity. Collins Title wants to evaluate its labor and multi-factor productivity with a new computerized title search system. The company has a staff of 4, each working 8 hours per day, for a payroll of cost of $640 per day and overhead expenses of $400 per day. Collins processes and closes on 8 titles each day. The new computerized title search system will allow the processing of 14 titles per day. Although the staff, their work hours and pay are the same, the overhead expenses are now $800 per day. What is the labor productivity and multi-factor productivity with old and new system? So students, before solving the question, it is very important to carefully read the question, and we'll have to find out that what actually information we require. In this particular example, we have some old system and we have some new system. Now what we want to calculate the productivity for the old system and for the new system. Now in order to calculate the productivity, what we'll have to do, we'll have to first identify the output, that is the output for the old system as well as the output for the new system. Then we will have to calculate the input, that what sort of inputs are being used, so that we can calculate the productivity. So in this particular example, if you read this particular statement, that is the company has a staff of 4, each working 8 hours per day. So this particular information gives you the information about the total labor working hours. If we multiply 4 by 8, it will be equal to 32. It means 32 hours are being consumed by the staff. There are the different overhead costs given, that is the $640 per day, and there is another overhead expense that is $400 per day. What is the output? Let's see in this particular example that what is your output. Collins processes and closes on 8 titles each day. It means 8 titles is your output, that is for the old system, and with the new system he is able to produce the 14 titles per day. And what happens with the new system, its overhead expenses will be increased up to $800 per day. So these are the most important information. We'll have to put it into the productivity formula. So in this particular example, students, suppose we are interested in the labor productivity. Now when we talk about the labor productivity, it means we are talking about labor which will be taken as only factor of input. That is the single factor productivity model. In this particular case, we will take only labor hours as the input. So you can see with the old system, what was the output? As I told you that with the old system, he was able to produce 8 titles. So this 8 is your output. And how much labor hours are being consumed? Again, that is 4 multiplied 8, 32. So this is actually our productivity with the old system. It will be equal to 0.25 titles per labor hour. Now we want to calculate the labor productivity again for the new system. Now for the new system, what will be the changes? Your input will remain same as per the information provided in the example, but the output is being changed. You can see that in this particular example, the new output is 14 titles per day. So our productivity with the new system will be 14 titles per day divided by 32 labor hours, and it will be equal to 0.4375 titles per labor hour. So this is our new productivity. So students, in this way we can calculate the productivity with the old system as well as the productivity with the new system. Now students, as I told you, just we calculated the labor productivity, that is the single factor productivity model, in which we used only the labor as input. But if we are interested to calculate the old multi-factor productivity model, multi-factor means now in this particular example, which has been taken from your textbook of Heizer, this is the solved example you can also see in your textbook. Now in this particular case, we are interested to take the input, that is the overhead cost as well as the other cost which is given in this particular example. You can see we are provided with 2 types of cost, that is the payroll cost of $640 per day and overhead expenses $400 per day, which were before for the old system. So if we put this particular information in this example, in order to calculate the old multi-factor productivity, the output for the new for the old system is 8 titles per day divided by expense plus payroll overhead expense plus payroll expense. It will be equal to $640 per plus $400, and it will be equal to 0.0077 titles per dollar. Now again students, this is the multi-factor productivity for the old system, and in this case the output remains same. Now if we calculate the multi-factor productivity for the new system, it will be equal to 14 titles per day, that is the new output for the new system, divided by the this expense, that is $640 plus overhead expense $800, because the overhead expenses increased to $800 for the new system. So this is our new productivity. Now again students, I would like to tell you another important thing in this particular example. In this multi-factor productivity model, we are just taking into account the two types of expenses as input, and again we are not taking the labor as the input. You can always calculate the total multi-factor productivity model by taking the labor as well as all the other costs taken into account. But in this particular case, we are considering only the overhead expense and the payroll expense as our inputs. So in this way, we can calculate the single factor productivity as well as the multi-factor productivity models. Now students, there are some problems when we measure the productivity. Sometimes one of the problem is quality may change while the quantity of inputs and outputs remains constant. So by changing the quality of the inputs, we may be able to improve the productivity. In that particular case, we may not be able to find out the factor that what are actually the inputs through which our productivity is increased, because we are taking into account just the quantity factor of inputs when we use the formula productivity is equal to output over input, but the quality factor is not being considered in this particular formula. So that is one of the limitation and assumption with this formula. Then external elements may also cause an increase or decrease in the productivity. Now we are taking into account the different inputs as our denominator, but there may be different other factors which can contribute towards productivity. So we'll have to take into account that what may be the external elements which can affect our productivity. Again, another important thing with respect to the productivity measurement, that we'll have to taken into account the precise units of measurement for our inputs as well as our outputs. That is, the unit of measurements for the inputs and outputs should be consistent. If these are different, that will not give you the appropriate value of productivity. So these are some of the limitations with productivity measurement. Now students, the research conducted by the different theories says that labor contributes about 10% of the annual increase in productivity, capital contributes about 38% of the increase in productivity, and similarly the management philosophy and the management activities contributes about 52% of the annual increase in productivity. So these are some of the figures that have been studied by some theories, that what are the different factors which have contributed towards the productivity improvement. And again, we'll have to give the due importance if we want to enhance the productivity level for our own organizations. Now students, we will discuss again different examples that how we can actually calculate the productivity in different practical scenarios. The production manager at a textile mills can currently expect his operation to produce 1000 square yards of fabric. Now students, what is 1000 square yards of fabric? This is actually the output. Requires 5 labor hours to process. So 5 labor hours is your input. That is, the labor hours will be taken as input. He believes that he can buy a better quality raw cotton, which will be enable him to produce 1200 square yards per ton of raw cotton with the same labor hours. Now students, if he use some new quality raw cotton, he will be able to increase his output to 1200 square yards. So this is the new output with the use of new better quality raw cotton. What will be the impact on productivity if he purchases the higher quality raw cotton? Now students, again, this is a very simple example, and actually it is the oral question. You can easily calculate the productivity, because this is, you can see that before using the quality raw cotton, the productivity will be equal to 1000 divided by 5, that will be equal to 200, and the new productivity will be equal to, this is the new output, so 1200 divided by 5, this will be the new productivity. As you can see here, 200 square yards per hour is old productivity or our current labor productivity, and new labor productivity is 240 square yards per hour. So there is an improvement in productivity by the use of that quality raw cotton. And what is the strength of that improvement? We can always determine this productivity improvement by using the formula new productivity minus old productivity divided by old productivity multiplied by 100. Usually the productivity improvement is measured in percentages, so it means there is 20% improvement in productivity by the use of that quality raw cotton. This is another example, students. A local auto mechanic finds that it usually takes him 2 hours to diagnose and fix a typical problem. What is his daily productivity? Assume an 8-hour day. Now students, there is 8 hours available for a person, and he can solve a particular problem in 2 hours. So how many problems he will be able to solve in one day? That is 8 divided by 2, that is 4 problems per day. So this is the actually his daily productivity. Now he believes that he can purchase a small computer troubleshooting device which will allow him to find and fix a problem in the incredible time of 1 hour. He will, however, have to spend an extra hour each morning adjusting the computerized diagnostic device. What will be the impact on his productivity if he purchases the device? Now students, if he uses a particular computer device, then that device will help you to reduce his problem solving time for the different problems. Initially it was 2 hours for one problem, but with that device this time may be reduced up to 1 hour, but he will require an extra time for this device or software adjustment. So if there are 8 hours in a day, 1 hour will be consumed by him in order to adjust the device and software. So the remaining hours are 7 hours now. So its new productivity will be equal to 7 problems per day, because now with that device he can solve a particular problem in 1 hour. So he can solve 7 problems in a day now. So this is his new productivity, that is 4 problems per day, 7 problems per day. And again, the improvement in productivity is equal to new productivity minus old productivity divided by old productivity multiplied by 100. This will be equal to 75%. So by using that particular device or the software, he was able to improve his productivity up to 75%. So in this way, by calculation of productivity before and after the usage of some machines or some systems, we can always decide out that what is the real impact of that change of that system or device in this particular example. This is students another example. Susan has a part-time cottage industry producing seasonal plywood yard ornaments for resale at local craft fairs and bazaars. She currently works 8 hours per day to produce 16 ornaments. Again students, we'll have to find out the output. What is the output? 16 ornaments. That's so clear. 8 hours, that is the input again. What will be the productivity? 16 divided by 8, that will be the productivity. That's so simple. Now she thinks that by redesigning the ornaments and switching from use of a wood glue to a hot glue gun, she can increase her total production to 20 ornaments per day. What is her new productivity? Now students, again ये जुबानी question है, that is the new output is 20, so we will divide 20 by the same labor hours, that is 8 hours, so 20 by 8, this will give you the new productivity. This is the case, 2 ornaments per hour, old productivity. 20 ornaments divided by 8 hours is equal to 2.5 ornaments per hour. This is the new productivity. And again, you can use this similar formula for the improvement in productivity, and there is 25% improvement in productivity in this particular case. This is the next example, students. A firm cleans chemical tank cars with standard equipment. The firm typically cleans 70 chemical tanks cars per month. They utilize 10 gallons of solvent, and 2 employees work 20 days per month, 8 hours a day. The company decided to switch to a larger cleaning machine. Last April, they cleaned 60 tank cars in only 15 days. They utilized 12 gallons of solvent, and the 2 employees worked 6 hours a day. What was their productivity with standard equipment? Now again students, you'll have to extract the relevant information so that we can calculate the productivity before and after the introduction of these new cleaning machines. Now students, before introducing this larger cleaning machine, the output was 70 chemical tank cars that he was able to produce. That is, they were able to clean 70 chemical tank cars by utilizing 10 gallons of solvent. Now, if this is actually our input, if we are interested to find out the productivity with respect to the solvent used, in this particular case, our old productivity will be 70 divided by 10 gallons of solvent. Now, this is the solvent, that is the inputs. Two types of inputs are used in this particular example, that is the solvent and the labor. If we calculate the productivity with respect to the solvent, then with the standard equipment again, the productivity will be equal to 70 divided by 10 is equal to 7. This is our old output. This is our input with respect to the quantity of solvent used before the introduction of new machine. Now again, if they introduce the larger machine, what happens? They cleaned 60 tank cars in only 15 days. Now students, if you are interested to calculate the productivity with respect to the only a single factor, that is the gallons of solvent, so you can see that in this particular case they utilized 12 gallons of solvent. So what is our new output and input? Our new output is 60 and our new input, if we consider the solvent as input, is 12. So our new productivity for solvent or with the usage of that larger machine is 60 over 12. This will be equal to 5, and this is the improvement, not actually the improvement, but the decrease in productivity. So it means that if you use the larger machine, the productivity is actually decreased by 28.57%. So is the negative sign here. Now students, if you are interested to calculate the labor productivity, so in this particular case the output will remain same before and after the use of that larger machine. So for this with the use of standard equipment, the output is 70. And what is our labor hours? Now you can calculate the labor hours because the information given in this particular example is here, that is the 2 employees worked 20 days per month and 8 hours a day. So what we will do, multiply 2 by 20 and then by 8, that is 2 multiplied by 8 multiplied by 20. This will give you the total input as 320, and in this way we can calculate the labor productivity with the standard equipment. Now again students, what happens after the usage of that larger cleaning machine? They utilized 12 gallons of solvent and the 2 employees worked 6 hours a day. Now this is very important. Now they are going to achieve the 60 tank cars service within only 15 days. So this information will give you actually the new labor hours. Now in this particular case, how we will calculate the new labor hours? 6 hours, 6 multiplied by 15 multiplied by 2, that is the 2 employees. So our new input in this case will be 2 multiplied by 6 multiplied by 15. So that will be equivalent to 180. So in this way we can calculate the new labor productivity after the usage of that larger machine, and you can see there is an improvement in the labor productivity by 50%. Now students, after these sort of calculations, an operations manager can take very important decisions, that why the productivity has been decreased with respect to the one of the input, and it has been increased with respect to the other input. So this information can always be very helpful for the operation managers to take some very important decisions in future. Now students, let's discuss another example. Joanna French is currently working a total of 12 hours per day to produce 240 dolls. So again, 240 dolls is our output. She thinks that by changing the paint used for the facial features and fingernails, that she can increase her rate to 360 dolls per day. Now students, after the usage of new paint, the new output will be 360. So this is the particular information you will have to extract in order to calculate the productivity. then total material cost for each doll is approximately $3.5. 1 unit material cost is $3.5. She has to invest $20 in the necessary supplies per day. Now this is the supplies cost, and this is per day cost. Energy costs are assumed to be only $4 per day. So again, this is the per day cost, not the per unit cost. And she thinks she should be making $10 per hour for her time. Now this information will help us to calculate the labor hours, students. What we will do, we can calculate the total labor hours by multiplying this value 10 with this 12 hours. Because no doubt she is working as an entrepreneur, but professionally what happens in the different organizations, no doubt she is working as the owner, but she will have to calculate the labor hours spent for the different work, so that we can take that particular input for the calculation of productivity. So the labor hours in this case will be equal to 10 multiplied by 12. Viewing this from a total multi-factor productivity perspective, what is her productivity at present and with the new paint? Now students, we have the different sort of inputs, and output is already given. Again, by extracting the particular information from this particular example, we can calculate the productivity before and after the usage of the new paint. Now again, before the usage of the new paint, our output will be 240. What sort of inputs will be used? One of the input is labor hours, that is 12 multiplied by 10. Other input is material cost. So what we will do, we will multiply 3.5 by 240, because this is the per unit cost. And if we produce 240 dolls, the total cost for these dolls will be equal to 3.5 multiplied by 240. Another input is supplies cost, which is $20. Now this is per day. Again, energy cost is $4. Again, this is cost. Now students, this is his current productivity information. That is, the labor is equal to 12 multiplied by 10, 120, as I just discussed. Material cost, because $3.5 is the unit cost. So what we will do, we will multiply this unit cost multiply by total output. So we can get the total material cost as $840. Supply cost is given as per day cost, so it will remain as $20. Energy cost is $4. So all these are the different inputs. If we add up all of these inputs, it will become $984. Now as I told you that 240 is our output, so productivity is equal to output over input. We have calculated input by taking into account all of these factors. So before the use of new paint, its productivity will be 0.24. Now what changes will be there by the usage of new paint? Labor hours will remain same. There will be a change in material cost. Why? Because our output level is being changed now. With the new paint, she is able to get the 360 dolls. So our material cost will be again $3.5, which is the unit cost, multiplied by total production or total output, that is 360. So we can get the material cost in this particular case as $1260. Supplies cost will remain same, energy cost will remain same, and now the total input cost is $1404. Again, the productivity is equal to new output now, that is 360 divided by total input we just calculated, and this will be equal to 0.26. So in this way we can calculate the productivity before and after the usage of that new paint. Now, there is another problem, students. If we refer problem 5, this is the problem we just referred. How would total multi-factor productivity change if using the new paint raised Ms. French's material cost by $0.5 per doll? So what happens if the material cost is increased by $0.5? What will happen? Its total material cost will become $4, because initially it was $3.5, but now it will become $4. That is 3.5 plus 0.5. So the only change is with respect to the material cost. Input is labor input remains same, that is 120. Material cost now will be 360 multiplied by $4, that is 3.5 plus 0.5. This will be the new material cost. Then supplies cost again will remain same, that is $20. Energy cost will remain same, and now the input cost is equal to $1584, and the productivity in this particular case will be equal to, again, output over total input is equal to 0.23. So in this way, students, we can extract the particular information in order to solve the particular problems and in order to measure the productivity in the organizational settings. This is the next problem. Again, if we refer problem 6, if she uses the new paint, by what amount could Messrs. French's material cost increase, keeping the total multi-factor productivity same as 0.24? Now this is a technical question, I would say. Now students, what is now being asked? It is being asked that if the productivity remains same, that is 0.24, which was initially with the old paint, how much will have to add up the material cost so that we are able to achieve the similar level of productivity. So this is actually the requirement in this particular case, that is how much material cost should be increased to maintain the same level of productivity, that is 0.24. Now students, what we can do, as you know that productivity is equal to output over input. Productivity is equal to output over input. Now it is being said in this particular example that output should remain same. So what we can do, we can put this 0.24 same here on the left hand side of this equation. Now what is the output? You can see from the previous example that our output for the new paint is 360. So this 360 will be here. Our labor cost is again same, which was actually 12 multiplied by 10. Now what happens with the material cost? We actually want to calculate the material cost, that how much material cost should be increased so that we can have this level of productivity. Now suppose the increase in the material cost is X. So what will happen? We'll have to multiply this X by the per unit cost. And what is the per unit cost? Now students, let's suppose that the per unit cost in this particular example is X, because we'll have to determine what is X. So we can always take this value as equivalent to X. If the output is 360, again, in order to calculate the total material cost, we'll have to multiply this 360 by the per unit cost multiplied by X. Now this X is actually to be calculated by us. Again, the energy cost and the supply cost will remain same. So you can see in this particular equation only X is unknown. So by solving this particular equation, we can easily calculate the value of X, that is our per unit cost. So this is the case, students. You can see that this is the output, that is 360 with the new paint. This is our labor cost. This is our material cost. Now what we have supposed here, we have taken that unknown value of per unit cost as X. The total material cost will be equal to 360 multiplied by X plus 20 plus 4, and it will be equal to 0.24. And it is being provided in the example that this value of productivity should not be changed. So you can see by cross multiplication and solving this particular equation, we can get the value of X is equal to 3.77. So it was being asked in the question that how much material cost should be increased. Initially the material cost was 3.5, so the increase in material cost will be equal to 3.77 minus 3.75. This will be almost equal to $0.27. So this is the final answer to this particular question. This is the next problem, students. Gibson Products produces cast bronze valves for use in offshore oil platforms. Currently, Gibson produces 1600 valves per day. Again, this 1600 is the output. The 20 workers at Gibson work from 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. with 30 minutes off for lunch and a 15-minute break during the morning work session and another at afternoon work session. Now students, this information is very important. You can see that the working hours are 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. So there are 9 hours between 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. But out of those 9 hours, they are taking the break of almost 1 hour. So we will subtract this 1 hour break, and the total working hours in this particular case will be 8 hours now. Now this is very important. The total working hours in this particular case will be 8 hours, and there are 20 workers. Now the Gibson is in a competitive industry and needs to increase the productivity to stay competitive. They feel that a 20% increase is needed. Gibson's management believes that the 20% increase will not be possible without a change in working conditions. So they change work hours. The new schedule calls on workers to work from 7:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m., during which workers can take 1 hour off at any time of their choosing. Obviously, the number of paid hours is the same as before, but the production increases, perhaps because the workers are given a bit more control over their workday. After this change, valve production increased to 1800 units per day. Now students, what happened here? The management changed the working rules. They give the autonomy to the workers that they can spend 1 hour of working at their own stake, whether they can come late for 1 hour, or they can leave early 1 hour, or they can take the 1 hour break in between, but they will have to again work for 8 hours. Now by changing these rules, what happened that the production level increased to 18 units per day, which was initially 16 units or valves per day. So first we'll have to calculate the labor productivity for the initial situation, that is the output over input again. Now before these rules, the output was 1600. So 1600 divided by, now 20 workers worked for 8 hours. So 8 multiplied by 20, this will be equal to 160. So this is 160, and it will be equal to 10 valves per hour. So this is our old productivity before the application of the management rules. Now students, what is the second requirement? We'll have to calculate the labor productivity for the hypothetical 20% increase. So as we calculated just the productivity, that is 10 valves per hour. So if there is an increase of 20% in productivity, the productivity will become 10 multiplied by 20%, that is 0.2. 0.2 multiplied by 10, that will be equal to 12 valves per hour. So if they want to increase the productivity by 20%, the new productivity will be 12 valves per hour. And the new output we may also calculate, that is 12 multiplied by 8 multiplied by 20 is equal to 1920. So this is the total output. That is actually the how we can calculate this new output. As we know, the formula is productivity is equal to output over input. Now if we want to calculate the output will be equal to productivity multiplied by input, and you know the productivity is 12 with that 20% increase multiplied by the input. The input you have already noted that it is equal to 8 multiplied by 20. So the new output will be equal to 1920 units. Now students, what happened after the management applied the different rules? Now in this particular case, the output has been increased from 1600 to 1800. So this is our new output. Divided by input will remain same. This is our new input. Now the new productivity is 11.25 volts per hour. Write a short paragraph analyzing these results. Now again, students, what happened in this particular case, sometimes by doing nothing we can achieve everything in our organizations. What happened, that the management just changed the rules by giving more autonomy and freedom to their workers so that they can take break with their own choice. So what happened, their motivation level is increased and they have produced more. So without the investment of anything, the management is now able to increase the productivity. And what is the new level of productivity? That is 11.25, which was initially 10 volts per hour. So this is the way the management can take sometimes very important decisions in order to improve the productivity. And again, the rules being applied and the freedom and the autonomy given to the employees can always have an impact on the level of productivity. This is the next example, students. The Dulek box plant produces wooden packing boxes to be used in the local seafood industry. Current operations allow the company to make 500 boxes per day in 2 8-hour shifts, that is 250 boxes per shift. The company has introduced some moderate changes in equipment and conducted appropriate job training so that the production level have risen to 300 boxes per shift. So initially they were being able to produce 500 total boxes in the 2 different shifts, and now the new output has been increased up to 300 multiplied by 2, because there are 2 shifts, 600 boxes now. That is the new output. Labor cost averaged $10 per hour for each of the 5 full-time workers on each shift. Capital costs were previously $3,000 per day and rose to $3,200 per day with the equipment modifications. Energy costs were unchanged by the modifications at $400 per day. So we'll have to calculate the multi-factor productivity before and after the changes. So students, again we'll have to extract the particular information in order to calculate the productivity before and after the equipment modification. Let's discuss the productivity before that modification. Again, students will have to first identify the level of output. As you can see that the level of output in this particular case is 500 boxes. That is before the introduction of this equipment modification. The level of output is given in at that particular point, that is 500. This is our old output. Now it is given that 2 8-hour shifts are being working, and 5 full-time workers are working on each shift. So how we can calculate the total working hours in this particular case? What we can do, we can multiply these values, that is 2 8-hour shifts. It will become 2 multiplied by 8 multiply by 10 this is the wage rate, and this is multiplied by 5, which are the full-time workers. So the total labor hours will become 2 multiplied by 8 multiplied by 10 multiplied by 5. So students, total working hours in this particular case will be equal to this particular value. So our old productivity will be equal to 500 divided by this value, and you can see that 500 divided by this value plus there is other input involved. As you can see that the capital cost is also involved, which is $3,000 per day, that is before the equipment modification, and there is another cost, that is energy cost, which is equal to 400. So our total inputs will be equal to labor input plus capital cost plus energy cost, and it will be equal to, this is the labor cost, this is the capital cost, and this is the energy cost. So our old productivity will be equal to 500 divided by 4200, and it will be equal to 0.119 boxes per dollar. Similarly, we can also calculate the productivity after the introduction of that equipment, and you can see now the new output is 600, again 300 boxes per shift means there are 2 shifts, so total output will be equal to 2 multiplied by 300. This will be equal to 600 divided by same. The labor hours will remain same. Only the capital costs will increase in this case, that is now equal to $3,200. This cost will remain same. So again, if you divide 600 by this sum, it will be equal to 0.136 boxes per dollar. So this is our new productivity. Students, let's discuss another example. A farmer grows crop in his 100 by 100 foot garden. He then sells the crop at the local farmers market. 2 summers ago, he was able to produce and sell 1200 pounds of crop. Last summer, he tried a new fertilizer that promised a 50% increase in yield. He harvested 1900 pounds. Did the fertilizer live up to its promise? Now students, again, this is a very simple question. This is actually our output, that is 1200 pounds before the use of the new fertilizer, and this is our input, that is 100 by 100 area of that particular crop land. So this is taken as input. 100 multiplied by 100, it will be equal to 10,000. So students, 1200, this is the output divided by this input. This will be equal to 0.12 pounds per square foot. So this is our initial productivity. And what will be our new productivity? For calculating the new productivity, you know that now the output has been increased, that is up to 1900 pounds. So 1900 is the new output, divided the input remains same, that is 10,000. So the new productivity will be equal to 0.19. So again, we can use the same formula, that is new productivity minus old productivity divided by old productivity multiplied by 100. So it means that 58.3% improvement is there in productivity. So it means that the productivity gain was 58.3%, not 50%. The fertilizer was at least as good as advertised. So actually he was able to achieve more than what he claims, that is the 50%. So its new productivity has been increased by more than 50%, that is 58.3%. So students, today we discussed importance of productivity, that how we can measure the productivity in order to have the idea before the operation managers that how we can improve the productivity. So productivity measurement is actually a very important sort of input or determinant for the productivity improvement decision making. So I hope you will carefully read up all of these problems we solved today. So it is very important for you people to calculate the productivity if you are being faced with similar sort of situation when you have some output or some input. So either by using the single factor productivity model or multi-factor productivity model, you will be able to calculate the productivity. So students, this is the end of our today's lecture, and I hope you will get it and you will practice the similar questions from your textbook. What is competitiveness? Competitiveness is the process by which one entity strives to outperform another. So all the organizations are always interested to find out the way that how they can better and they can differently satisfy their customers' needs and how they can have the edge over their competitors. So this is a very important aspect for all the organizations in order to better satisfy their customer needs and their customers' demands. There is another aspect of competitiveness, that is, we can define it as the optimum allocation of resources in order to obtain the long-term objectives of the organization. And in the last class, we also discussed that mostly the profitability and cost minimization are the prime objectives for most of the organizations so that they can achieve the productivity. So competitiveness means the allocation of the resources, that how the organization can achieve these organizational objectives in the most efficient way and the most effective manner. Now again class, in the last lecture we discussed about the productivity, that productivity is again related to the efficiency and effectiveness. So in that particular aspect, there is a interrelationship between competitiveness and productivity. competitiveness actually help us to enhance the productivity in the organizational setting. And on the other way out is also true that the productivity can also help us to have a sort of competitive advantage for the organization. So there's a two-way relationship between competitiveness and productivity. Now let's discuss some important dimensions of competitiveness, that how the organizations can compete against each other. Okay, one of the dimensions of competitiveness is the price. Now again, if some organization has been able to give the lower price products or the products at the lower rate with respect to their competitors to their customers and needs, then that may be a competitive advantage for those organizations. But there is a misperception about price, and we usually think that a lower priced product is an inferior product, but in reality that's not true. Actually what happens in reality, that the organization may have a sort of advantage. That advantage may be due to the better location, maybe due to the better efficient utilization of resources, and that may be due to the economies of scale. Now what is the economies of scale? If we are going to increase the production level, then the per unit cost of production decreases with this production level. So if an organization is able to achieve that economies of scale, they can achieve the better products at the lower priced products. Then again, some organizations can sacrifice on their profit margins, and they can offer the products and the services to the customers at the lower price. So due to any of these advantages, if they are able to provide the products and services to their customers at the affordable rate or at the low rate with respect to the competitors, then that will be a very important competitive advantage for the organizations. So this is a very important aspect about price. Next important dimensions of competitiveness is the differentiation. Differentiation means that how the organization will be able to add the different features and the different attributes in their products, so their product will be different from that of competitors. So it is very important for the organizations to add something in their products and the services, so they can have the edge over their competitors. So this is the differentiation, and differentiation may be a very important source of competitive advantage for any of the organization. Then another aspect of competitiveness is the quality. So what is quality? Quality is nothing but it is the combination of the different characteristics of the products which are able to better satisfy our customer needs. So if we are able to give the quality products to our customers, then of course the organization can have a competitive advantage. The next important dimension of competitiveness is the flexibility. Flexibility means that what is the strength of the organization in order to respond to the environmental changes. Now, if the organization has the flexible structure and they are able to meet the customer needs according to the changing environment and according to the changing requirements, then of course they can have a very good competitive advantage. So all the organizations are trying to have the flexible structure, flexible operations in order to better satisfy their customer needs. There is another very important dimension of competitiveness, that is the organizational human resources. That is the managers and the workers who are working for the organization. Now these are again the human resources who can always give the competitive advantage for their organizations, because they have the particular education and the particular expertise which may be different with respect to the competitors. So the human resource is also a very important source of competitive advantage and the competitiveness for the organizations. Okay, let's talk about some of the indicators of competitiveness. Now, as we have already talked about, that productivity is a very important indicator of competitiveness, and productivity is the efficiency and effectiveness again with which the goods and the services are produced and provided. So we have already discussed that there is an interrelationship between competitiveness and productivity, and if we are able to achieve the competitiveness, then of course it will help to enhance the productivity in the organization. And on the other way, if we are able to achieve the productivity, then it will lead to some sort of competitive advantage or the competitiveness for the organization. Okay, another aspect of competitiveness, that is the innovation. That is the involvement of the creation of product and the services and the processes that is new to an organization. Now, we may not only confine the innovation to the products and the services, new ideas may also lead to the innovation, which can help us to better satisfy the customers and the needs. So there are the different types of innovation, like product innovation. If we are able to have the different sort of characteristics in our products, that may lead to the product innovation. Or if we are able to modify the products regularly after the required intervals of time, again the innovation will be there. Or we are able to entirely develop the new products, then again that will lead to the product innovation. Another aspect of innovation is the process innovation. Now this is a sort of innovation which is more concerned for the operations managers, because they are always concerned and they are always interested to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of their processes, that is the operations. So if we are able to reduce or eliminate the non-value added activities from our operations, that may be a sort of innovation, and that may be a sort of competitive advantage as well. You remember in the last class we discussed about the operations management process, that there are some inputs, then there are some transformation processes or the conversion processes, and there are some outputs which are in the form of the final products and the services. Now operations management are more concerned with that the conversion process or the transformation process. So this process innovation will help us that how we can add the value to the different stages of this process, that is the conversion process, and how we can eliminate the non-value added activities out of this transformation process. So again, all the organizations are always interested in this sort of innovation, that is the process innovation. Then there are other aspects of innovation, that is the incremental innovation. If we try to innovate the products, that is the marginal improvement in the product, then that will be termed as the incremental innovation. Now if we talk about the TQM, so in TQM we always talk about the marginal sort of improvement in our products and services, not the radical improvement. But if we want the radical improvement in our products, in our services, in our operations, in our processes, then that will be the radical sort of innovation. Now why we need radical innovation? Sometimes our processes, our products or our operations are so obsolete and redundant, and age-old practices and the policies are there. So there will be a need to radically redesign our processes and operations. So in that case we may need the radical sort of innovation. If we compare some of the concepts with respect to the incremental innovation and the radical innovation, so we can say that TQM is a sort of incremental innovation, and if we talk about the restructuring or we talk about the business process re-engineering, that involves a sort of radical innovation. Then again, technology plays a very important role in innovating the different products and services. So technology, again, that can be a very important indicator of competitiveness. So productivity, innovation, marginal innovation, radical innovation, product innovation, process innovation, all these types of innovations and creativities can help us to achieve the competitiveness for our organization. Okay, what is latest being happening in the organizations, that there is a change in focus all over the world from product competitiveness to the process competitiveness. Now we have already discussed that organizations try to differentiate their products in order to have the competitive advantage over their competitors, but now this focus has been changed, and now the operations managers, strategic managers and the general managers are more interested in the process innovation than the product innovation. Product innovation is no doubt there, but they are also more interested in the process innovation, that how we can streamline our activities, how we can effectively and efficiently manage our operations in order to have the competitive advantage over our competitors. And no doubt these processes have always the margins to have the competitive advantage, So important is the focus on the process competitiveness, process change, process redesign in the organizational setting. Now this is always the concern for the operations managers. Then again, most of the organizations are focusing from process competitiveness to the structure and the society competitiveness. Now that is again the long-term view of that competitiveness, that they are talking about the structure competitiveness, that the structure should be competitive. They are always interested in the lean structure, organizational structure, so that they can better serve their customers, and there's a sort of better communication within the organization. So structure competitiveness is another focus for most of the organizations. Then society competitiveness. Now the organizations are always thinking about the society, that how their policies, how their operations and how their products and the services are finally contributing to the overall society. Now, no doubt that do not have the direct impact on the profitability, but it may have some indirect impact, in the sense that by increasing the image in the society, you will have the good repute in the market, and of course you can have the long-term viability for the organization in that in the form of that reputation. So these are some latest emerging concepts about competitiveness. Now, competitive advantage again. Types of competitive advantages a nation's companies enjoy must shift from comparative advantage to the competitive advantage. Now, there are the two types of advantage. One is the comparative advantage, the other one is the competitive advantage. Now, what is the comparative advantages? If a firm has some access to some natural resources which the other firms don't have, and if that firm has a sort of edge due to that availability of the natural resources, then that will be termed as comparative advantage. And what is the competitive advantage? Suppose there are the two firms and they have the similar sort of resources, and they are able to, and one of the firm is able to effectively and efficiently utilize the resources in order to provide some unique products and services to their customers, then that will be termed as competitive advantage. So there is a difference between comparative advantage and competitive advantage. Okay, what are the aftermaths of that low competitiveness? If we are not being able to differentiate our products, our processes, our operations, then what will be the drawback? What will be the impact on the organization? Of course, there will be the reduced sales, and that will affect, of course, the profitability of the organization. The business will be at the stagnant stage, and again, you will not have the long-term impact over your business, Then again, there will be the underutilization of the resources because the demand will not be there. The customers will not be interested to buy the product from your organization, and there may be the chances of underutilization of the different capacities and resources, and of course that will lead to the lower productivity. So these are some of the drawbacks if you are not able to avail that competitiveness for our products and services.